crossing the line for reunification, bringing the peace in our lifetime. No more forever war, we want peace in our time. No turning away, no turning away. No more forever war, we want peace first today.
Okay, so hello everyone. Again, that was a beautiful piece by Morley that was made for our Korea Peace Action in DC last year, which you'll hear a lot more about from Jungwon and Yoon today. So we're so thankful to Morley for that beautiful, beautiful song. So just some housekeeping. If you're not speaking, please keep yourself on mute. So we have minimal audio. And as mentioned before, please introduce yourself in the chat with your name and where you're calling in from. We're recording, right, Solby? We're recording? Okay, so just as an FYI, we are currently recording, so please be mindful of that, but we'll stop recording before Q&A and the breakout rooms will also not be recorded. So I'll just quickly introduce Korea Peace Now for newcomers. Korea Peace Now is a campaign founded in 2019 to educate, organize, and advocate for an end to the Korean War and establish lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. This US-based grassroots network has now grown to have hundreds of members across the country. You're seeing a cross-section here, multi-generational Korean Americans, humanitarian workers, faith leaders, and just anti-war activists. We work on advocacy, political education, narrative change, organizing, and coalition building. We are a diverse set of people, but we're held together by principles rested in the belief that we believe a world is possible where everyone can flourish in an environment of peace, hope, dignity, and collective well-being. We mobilize collective action grounded in intersectional feminism to end the Korean War, democratize US foreign policy, and contribute to lasting peace across the Asia Pacific and the world. So if you would like to join the Grassroots Network, if you're not already a member, please sign up on our website, koreapeacenow.org. So this year we decided to launch the series Intergenerational Healing and Learning. Although the Korean War is often referred to as the Forgotten War, most of us in this room know that the Korean War inaugurated the US military-industrial complex, quadrupled spending, and was one of the most brutal wars of the 20th century, with more than 4 million killed in just 3 years, mostly civilians. And we also know that this conflict continues more than 70 years later, after a fragile ceasefire was signed, and keeps families separated and drives extreme militarization in Korea and the entire Asia Pacific. So we're going to talk tonight about intergenerational healing and learning. We know that these topics can bring up a lot of heavy emotions, so we urge folks to take care of themselves, leave the breakout rooms that we'll be going into later on if you need. And as always, make space for others, practice generosity and listening and learning. And we'd also encourage to not have too much crosstalk, share from your own story, but you don't have to comment on the stories of others. So acknowledge we all come from different experiences, identities, and backgrounds. So for the rundown this evening, we'll hear from both Jungwon and Yoon Ra. And as you think of questions while they're presenting or chatting, you feel free to put them in the chat. So their full bios are online, but just to give short versions. Jungwon Kim is a multidisciplinary communication strategist and advocate who has chronicled frontline environmental human rights movements for the past 2 decades. And she served for 9 years as head of the creative and editorial team at the Rainforest Alliance, and for 8 years as the editor of Amnesty International. She was also our comms lead and true visionary for Korea Peace Action and for this specific ceremony that we'll be talking about today. Yoon Ra is a trans, non-binary grassroots documentary filmmaker and cultural organizer, creating counter-narrative media with counter-media narrative with sex worker mutual aid groups, Red Canary Song and Scarlet Cha-Cha, and is currently a campaign fellow with US Campaign for Palestinian Rights. So I'll turn it over to Jungwon.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for leaving little notes in the chat. And it's so wonderful to see some familiar faces and names, and also to see lots of people I don't know yet. I am so honored and really delighted to be invited to be part of this intergenerational healing series along with Yoon. And I really want to thank Kathy for her vision in creating this series and curating this series, and for always paying very, very close attention to community care within our movement. I also really want to thank Christine Ahn, who really wove together so many of the connections that made the Unbind Your Heart ceremony deeply, deeply meaningful. I see many people here who actually were also in Washington, D.C. last summer and who participated in the ceremony. And then, obviously many people who did not. And so hopefully by the end of our time together, you will get a sense of what happened there, and also be able to, or feel invited to kind of plug into what I really see as a continuous stream of intergenerational healing, of taking care of our Han, of transmuting our Han into I think what Kathy first called a renewable resource to power our peace movement. And I saw Christine just join as I was calling your name, Christine, to just express gratitude for connecting me and weaving in all of the people who made the ceremony as meaningful as it was. First and foremost, our shaman who really guided us through some uncharted territory, Dohee Lee, as well as novelist Joseph Han, whom I understand was part of in session 1 of this healing series. Surugiro was also an amazing part of our ceremony. And then, of course, Yoon, who not only documented the ceremony and is really engaging in this kind of intensely mystical process of translating something undefinable that happened in a room with 250 people into an archival performance document that can be a resource for the rest of the community. So yeah, I just really wanted to thank those people in particular, as well as, of course, Echo and all of the other organizers who made it happen. Echo's father, whose name I don't know other than Echo Aboji, but he received a rough sketch of this small architectural structure that we needed, and he just built that thing up until the last minute before we started. So thank you to Echo for all of your incredible organizing skills, and then for Echo Aboji, Mr. Cho. Yeah, so I thought we could start. I think also I understand you needs maybe another minute or two to attend to something time sensitive. So I thought maybe we could start with the video of what took place in Washington, D.C. in the room. It was in the Foundry, which is a very progressive, LGBTQ friendly church in Washington, D.C., the Foundry, and I believe it's a Methodist church. And so that is where the event took place. It was part of an entire day of action on the 70th anniversary of the armistice agreement that halted, but as we all know, did not end the Korean War and left Koreans and Koreans in diaspora in a state of very painful and permanent, well, let's not say permanent, but semi-permanent limbo. And so as, you know, the Women Cross DMZ and Korea Peace Now teams were basically mobilizing at this unprecedented gathering in Washington, D.C. to put pressure on our legislators, and also to strengthen connections between generations of Korean peace activists and advocates. You know, it became really clear also that there is another element to this work, and really to any movement work, which is to take care of our spirits and to do that in community and to take care of each other as we take care of ourselves. And so that is how this the idea for this ceremony was born. And we now have the clip queued up, so I will mute myself while we listen and watch.
Let's remember that we're all indigenous people's land. We honor and thank for their ancestors and their descendants, their resistance and their resilience. We imagine the land return to their people. People return to their 고향, their birthplace. Let us remember our history. Let's make it happen. Unification, independence. 울어야 할 때 울 줄 알고, 웃어야 할 때 웃을 줄 알아야 그럽시다. 우리 조상님들 못하셨어요. 우리 조상님들 못하셨어요. 대신 해드리세요. Release your ancestors' all. 응어리, sorrow, come.
Thank you. Hi, Yoon. So I just did a little intro and we watched the clip. And I will share a short piece of writing before we get into the second part of the clip, and also some discussions about how to do storytelling about something so big, and also something that at times can feel really opaque. I realized that for the people who did not attend the ceremony, I probably didn't quite explain things well enough, but Dohee said in the video, you know, untie the knots. And that ceremony is a shamanic earth-based ritual from Korea, where you untangle the knots of your ancestors' Han. And so that was one of the things that we incorporated, and the structure that Echo Abuji built for us. Okay, so I have since then been writing about this experience, and I'm going to share with you all in full transparent vulnerability, something that is in rough first draft form. But I am working on a book about, it's about Han, really, it's about grief that is on a continuum from the personal to the collective to the ancestral and planetary. And so there's a chapter that kind of begins with this ceremony. And I'm going to just read a couple paragraphs from this chapter. The Biden administration did not respond to our day of action by ending the Korean War. Yet, what did occur was something bigger. We joined hands and turned toward grief. We entered the portal, not knowing if there would be a bottom. Standing together, we summoned the courage to face what is too terrifying to face alone. The possibility that the last generation of surviving family members separated in the Korean War may die before seeing their siblings, parents, or children again. The poisoning of entire villages on the peninsula and around the world by the war games of greedy men. The boiling of our oceans under fires stoked by the venal greed of the 1%. The sixth mass extinction. We met these enemies with song, dance, ritual, ceremony, togetherness, ancestral technologies, as my friend Toshi Regan calls them, a realm where she is both virtuoso and guide, thanks to her illustrious Black liberation lineage. These are the innovations our ancestors developed to survive unbearable suffering, passed down as gifts to help us sustain our practice of hope and inform our praxis of liberation. The full body embrace of a cappella music composed by Toshi's mother, Bernice Johnson Regan, and the civil rights music group she founded, Sweet Honey in the Rock. The mantras my paternal grandmother chanted to Guan in the corner of our living room every morning to help her cope with the shocking isolation of moving to Los Angeles as a new widow from a village she had only left once during wartime. The touching of the earth ceremony my daughters and I practice at Blue Cliff Monastery, adapted for lay practitioners by the late Vietnamese Zen monk Thich Nhat Hanh. The wiping of tears ceremony shared with me by one of the last living speakers of the old Lakota language, Tiakasin Ghost Horse, who described how the earth received the tears shed by him and his fellow Native American boarding school survivors as the ceremony peeled away layers upon layers of encrusted grief. The Iyawo ceremony, Jewish students holding Passover Seder in the midst of Gaza Solidarity protest encampments at college campuses around the world, ritualizing their kinship with Palestinians and their independence from political Zionism. The Iyawo ceremony, our Cuban friends Katia Yomi and Bernardo Rodriguez, both priests, Yoruba priests, insisted on holding for my partner, Asen, after they did a 2-hour reading for him that sent them both into a fit of shaking and tears over the violent severing of his ancestral line somewhere between West Africa and Florida. On that same trip, I told Katia and Bernardo that a Brazilian candomblé priestess had once read me as a daughter of Oshun, the goddess of fresh water. They nodded, consulted with the spirits and then each other, and informed me I was no longer crowned by her. I had become a daughter of Yemaya, who is the mother of all the Orishas and the protector of women, children, and the sea. I received the rest of the reading while seated on a straw mat on the floor of their bedroom in Cienfuegos. I let it wash over me rather than straining to understand their fast Spanish. What I understood from their message was this: to be a daughter of Yemaya means to embrace a duty of care for humanity, for our planet, to hold more than what is yours to hold, to embrace what Catholics call fishes and loaves, which is both a duty of care to all our kin and a continuous process of alchemy that meets infinite suffering with a promise to transform it through service. Under the flickering fluorescent bulb in a town on the southern coast of Cuba, I am receiving a message from a Yoruba medium that it is time to return to Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of great compassion who received my grandmother's daily prayers. Known as Gwanum in Korea, she is often associated with the ocean, rendered in sandstone and perched on the cliffs of seaside temples. No one ceremony has ever changed the world, but every ceremony changes those who practice it wholeheartedly. And in this way, I commit myself to the long, long game of awakening one soul at a time, beginning with myself, until we are all finally free. And
Thank you so much, Jungwon. I just want to say it's very beautiful, and I think that was the first time that video was shown in like a public setting. And so just want to name that also for all the participants to know that. And yeah, if I see that there's been some reactions already in the chat, but if you have questions and reactions as they come up, please feel free to write them in the chat. I guess I can just sort of like frame a question to both of you two. I think in our conversations leading up to this program, we talked a little bit about how to capture something that is so primordial and like very deeply internally felt, both in this like DC political space and then also then later on film. So yeah, I wonder if the two of you want to share a little bit more on like the process of coming up with a concept and then how maybe it changed while you were going through the actual ceremony itself and then now trying to record.
one thing I can share, I know Yoon is probably queuing up the video. So as they prepare to do that, I will just share this, that we had a series of meetings with Do-hee and everybody who was involved with the ceremony. And then we planned and shaped together, we shaped the ceremony. We did the ceremony in Washington, D.C. And then at the end of the ceremony, a couple of us had this aha moment of like, oh my goodness, we forgot this really important thing. So as you saw in the video, part of the ceremony involved people writing their Han on these slips of paper, which is also another Korean shamanic tradition. And usually, according to Do-hee, when you do that in ceremony, you then burn the papers at the end. But since we were in a Methodist church in the middle of Washington, D.C., we could not set fire to the papers. And so at the end of the ceremony, we gathered all of the papers and then MJ actually helped me wrap them in this, red cloth. And so we had this huge Han baby of, papers with everybody's precious things written on them. And it just, was this huge responsibility. So we asked Do-hee what to do. And then Do-hee said, well, you should burn them, but you'll have to do it later. So I brought them back to New York and they sat in my living room. It's like this force of energy, this big Han baby in red, for a couple of months, until one day, I think 1 week, it just felt like it was time. And so Yoon and Kelly Choi, who may be here, I couldn't see if Kelly is here, and then my older daughter, Anire, who was part of, who came to DC as well. We woke up at dawn and headed out to the ocean at Rockaway Beach in Queens. at about, I don't know, 6 a.m. It was very, very early to complete the second part of the ceremony. And so that is what Yoon is queuing up here on the video. Yoon, do you want to maybe explain a little bit about what we're looking at here and
Sure.
yeah,
hi.
this interesting window into your edit suite here.
Yeah. So as Jungwon was saying before, everyone's writing was put into this this red what would you call it? I guess we could say pojagi in Korean, but like this container all the way from DC. And before we go into this, we're actually bringing you all into the editing suite of this part of the ceremony, because it is such a highly communal process, documenting a communal process or a communal ritual. The technological parts of it too just kind of become communal, and that's been a really beautiful thing to experience. And I'll leave it here for now. I just wanted to say, as a documentarian, you know, working with grassroots groups for the past almost 10 years, making sure that our narratives are told the way that we want it to be told. I was really excited to be asked to film this ceremony because it was just a combination of ritual that is going against state policy. It was a grassroots convening that also acknowledged indigeneity and the land and waters, not just of where the ritual is taking place, but also, who we are as Korean people on Turtle Island. And also using art and performance. And I knew that creating a digital container of this or representation of this event would not be easy. And here we are a year later, and we're still kind of working with this event. And so even sharing it with y'all right now, your input and also your viewing of this does or can inform how we put it together. So I just want to play a little bit of this. This was maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks after the DC ceremony. And we chose not to play sound today because, sight and sound are both very powerful mediums. And I feel like while we're still working with this, just kind of keeping the sound maybe private for now until we really, figure out the direction of how we'll put this second part of the ceremony together. And as we were watching this, one of the things that came up in a conversation with Kathy and Jungwon a few weeks ago was that, even if we have a long lineage of a spirituality of resistance, ancestrally and also universally, there's also a spirituality to violence. It takes a lot of to enact such violence. Our oppressors are also in their own spirituality, in their own spiritual practice. And I think, so much of spiritual practice is about the narratives that we know of ourselves and our land and our people, and going against nation state narratives is really difficult. And I feel like through communal ceremony and also documentation of communal ceremony, we can make accessible this form of organizing that a lot of people kind of write off as American, I will say. I've been in Korea for about 6 months now, and I think a lot of the direct organizers here have not as much engaged in this type of communal ritual. Of course, there are those who are in their spiritual journey and are mudangs here and are you know, that's their community offering. But you know, to see this type of way of convening and communal processing, also in Korea. is
You and
something
something that you said right now just sparked an insight for me, which is what makes what makes ceremony such a powerful instrument of transmutation. And when we're talking about spiritual resistance, I think we're talking about spiritually informed resistance to narratives and values of domination and control or violence. What I think is so powerful about ceremony and ritual is that it's not didactic. It is not a left brain exercise of, you just said, fact A, B, and C, and then your conclusion was this. And now I'm going to counter that with these facts, and my conclusion is that. It's kind of removing it from that particular battlefield, and instead, with beauty and art, it's kind of honoring and memorializing an aspect of our history that has very intentionally been erased in the dominant narrative of the Korean War. So that's kind of what's coming up for me, as we're looking at this footage together.
Yeah, on that note, oh, go ahead, you.
I just wanted to share a detail of why I talked about spiritualities of violence, and why we also need to build that, our spiritualities of resistance and also love with each other, right? Because I learned over here from a mudang, a shaman, that there are mudangs here who actually invoke the spirit of General MacArthur.
That's wild.
Yeah, one of the lead, because they feel that he has rescued Korea, as an American general, and really rescued the Asia Pacific with his violence, and actually give him rituals and give him chesa and tell him to come back and really, like, yeah, we're there, y'all, and it's just like, if that's happening with folks who are initiated and in this practice for a really long time, what are we going to do with people power, with our spiritual people power, to also kind of make sure that we are rooted, even as diaspora, to make sure that we are rooted. And I feel like, yeah, through ceremonies and like these and the relationships that we've made, like we can combat that kind of spiritual violence as well.
That MacArthur tidbit you just shared, I think also illuminates something else about ceremony, which is that in my understanding of ceremony, the purpose of ceremony is to transmute something. There are many kinds of ceremonies, like there are graduation ceremonies, and the purpose of that is to celebrate, etc. But I'm talking about this kind of ceremony, which for us was, from the very beginning, we called it a Han transmutation ceremony. So we are not just ritualizing our trauma, because that can actually become really corrosive and dangerous and lead us into more violence and revenge. I think what's really important about this kind of ceremony is that we go into it with the intention of transmuting our trauma, transmuting our Han into something else, so that it doesn't corrode our spirits and kind of bring us into a cycle of violence and revenge. So I think there's an important distinction to be made there between, ritualizing trauma, memorializing trauma, and transmuting trauma. And I think we very much were interested in the transmutation.
This part of the beach ritual was really amazing because you would think that the fire was out, but as you saw, Jungwon flipped over this piece, and there was actually the fire was still there under it, and I cut it because it was a little long, but yeah, the time that it takes to really complete the burning.
Well, we were joking around. We don't know whose Han that was, but we were kind of joking around like, wow, that person's Han was really intense because it's still burning.
Well, thank you, Jungwon and Yoon, so much for sharing this really precious behind the scenes, and Jungwon, for your reading, and also for sharing a little bit about your process. We have a good group here tonight, so I wonder if you both want to just share maybe one last closing comment, and then I think we're going to play the video one more time for just the new folks who came in who might have missed it. And then we'll go into our breakout so people can really start participating and talking and engaging conversation with you both. So I'll just turn it back to you for any closing comments you want to share, reflections, things you want to get people percolating on. We'll watch the video and people can really sit with it, and then we'll go to breakouts.
Yoon, do you have anything you'd like to share first?
I think, as I've said before, this is actually my second time visiting Korea in my life. Even if I've gone back and forth in the middle of it, to be able to really be received and meet so many incredible people, and also just the land here and the seas here has been just such a expansive process and evolution for me. And I wanted to share that, so much about alchemy actually comes from Northeast Asia, and like processes of alchemy, like you seeing the transformations of the land and minerals, and like you utilizing that science for yourself, your inner self, and your spirituality. And I see how that also ties actually into queerness and transness as well. And those are the things I've just been reflecting on, and I wonder how that can come up in some of our conversations today with each other, no matter what breakout group we're in.
I love that this frame is where you kind of froze us, because it reminded me of something that we haven't really gotten into yet, but maybe we will in the breakout rooms. What are some of the frequencies of transmutation? And joy is a huge one. And in my writing, I've really been exploring this idea of the relationship between Han and Hung, that sort of wild, cathartic joy that you see here, where we ran around and around the fire. It's almost a kind of giddy feeling. And I think that, again, we don't want to ritualize our pain and stay in our pain. We want to honor our pain and ideally transmute it into something else. And why not aim for joy? Why not aim for connection and community? So yeah, I just kind of wanted to really say that explicitly, that, joy is a beautiful kind of resolution or transformation tool for us to use as we work through, generations and generations of Han.
Thank you so much, Jungwon and Yoon. So I'm going to just share my screen one last time so people can start getting in the mindset of getting ready to share and receive in a more intimate breakout space. Okay.
Here we are, ancestor land of Anacostans. Let's remember that we're all indigenous people's land. We honor and thank for their ancestors and their descendants, their resistance and their resilience. We imagine the land return to their people. People return to their 고향, their birthplace. Let us remember our history. Let's make it happen. Unification, independence. 울어야 할 때 울 줄 알고, 웃어야 할 때 웃을 줄 알아야 해. 그럽시다. 우리 조상님들 못하셨어요. 우리 조상님들 못하셨어요. 대신해드리세요. Release your ancestors' gold. 응원, sorrow,